From CITI program, I'm Darren Gaddis, and this is the best of On Campus. Today, I reconnected with Fred Martin, the chair of computer science at University of Texas at San Antonio. Fred was previously a guest on the On Campus episode, AI in Higher Education. As a reminder, this podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not intended to provide legal advice or guidance. You should consult with your organization's attorneys if you have questions or concerns about the relevant laws and regulations discussed in this podcast. Additionally, the views expressed in this podcast are solely those of the guest and do not represent the views of their employer. Hi, Fred. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Darren. It's nice to be talking to you again.
For some of our newer listeners, what is your educational and professional background?
I'm a faculty member in computer science. I did all my degrees at MIT. I was there for 18 years. My undergrad is in CS. My master's is in mechanical engineering. That's where I joined a research team that is all about creating new materials for people to learn computing. Back then, I started doing robotics for kids, which is what I worked on for my master's and my PhD. And then I became a faculty member at UMass Lowell, and I stayed there for 21 years. Just this summer, I accepted a job as chair of computer science at UT San Antonio. Now I'm here in sunny Texas and very much enjoying it.
Congratulations on your new position. Since we've last spoken, what has changed in terms of AI or artificial intelligence within higher education?
We first talked in spring of 2023, and ChatGPT had just broken onto the scene, and everybody was like saying, what are we going to do about this? And we've all realized we all are using ChatGPT. Pretty much every person I speak to, from academics, friends, people in athletics, everyone's using it because it's just so useful, right? It's great for generating ideas. I think one of the things it does, it reminds us of stuff we already know. So it makes us feel smart. So yeah, that's right. I knew this. It mashes ideas together that we might not have thought of. I think most faculty are starting to realize it would be silly to try to prevent students from using it. So it's really all about how do we bring this into our teaching? And that becomes the next thing to figure out.
As AI becomes even more integrated into our day to day lives, what kind of changes or things do you foresee happening as we start to approach the spring 2024 semester?
Faculty are recognizing that some prior forms of assessment just aren't effective anymore. We can't just ask students to write essays about things without addressing the fact that they will be using ChatGPT. And so they should be scaffolded in how they use it. And so I think some of the deeper questions really are about like authorship and how are people who created the content that got fed into the models, how are they recognized and rewarded for their contributions? So I think these are conversations that we're all having, and particularly in higher ed. Higher ed, the academic enterprise is all about giving credit for where ideas come from. Okay, at one level, you can say, hey, I used ChatGPT and it generated these ideas for me, and then I refine them. But then really it's incumbent on us to recognize how did this thing generate those ideas and where did it draw the material from?
Is there anything else you would like us to know about AI within higher education?
I wanted to comment on my field particularly, which is computer science. At my new school at UT San Antonio, we have a strong group of faculty who do research in software engineering. And so that's one of the domains that generative AI is widely being used, tools like Microsoft Copilot, which helps you write code. And I think some of the mass media is suggesting that, oh no, if you're in software development, you're going to be out of a job. I think that's silly. I think all throughout the history of the development of software, as new tools were created to make it easier to write code with the hope of it becoming more that anyone could write code, which is something I actually think is a good thing. Software's got more complicated, so the job of software developers got more complicated. So I think these great tools will help us be more productive. And that's broadly where I see generative AI across academia and other aspects of intellectual creativity, is that generative AI helps us think of new things. It mashes ideas together that we might not have thought of, and then it allows us to reflect on them. We're still the ones who are making the creative decisions. It's giving us ideas to work with. So I think just across higher ed, most of us, that's where we're going. We're looking for how to partner with these tools and use them to extend our human capabilities.
Fred, as always, it's a pleasure to catch up with you today, and I hope our listeners enjoyed this episode of The Best of On Campus featuring AI in higher education.
Thank you, Darren. Pleasure to talk with you as always.
Thanks for listening to this episode. Keep listening to hear Darren's original interview with Fred on the topic of AI in higher education. Subscribe to CITI on Campus wherever you get your podcasts. And be on the lookout for Season 2 of On Campus kicking off in early 2024 with new host Ed Butch. And now back to Darren and Fred's original interview on AI in higher education.
Hi, Fred. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Darren. It's nice to meet you.
Fred, to help us ground our conversation today, what is artificial intelligence or AI and how is it broadly used within higher education?
Sure. So I used to define AI as something more simple as simply automated decision making. So AI will evaluate a bunch of data, make a decision, or it'll evaluate a situation and make a choice. And so that for a long time, that's a pretty good definition of AI. I think in the last couple of years, and particularly in the last 6 months, we've come across this new category of AI, which existed before, but now it's affecting us and we're seeing it. So it's generative AI. So AI that is a creative agent and makes things that are really compelling. There's three sort of major ways that AI is used in higher ed. So one of those is for data analytics and often for student success types of applications. So looking at student grades and attendance in a large scale systemic way, and really to help faculty and staff support students. So it's data analytics and predictive analytics to sort of identify which students are doing great and which students can use more attention. So that's one big area of AI. Another way it's used is in grading systems. So faculty will use AI technology to sort of pre-process student exams and categorize things, and it becomes a grading assistant to faculty. So I think the most prevalent use is where the AI will like categorize student answers, and then faculty can apply rubrics to these groupings of answers, and it really becomes a way to support faculty in doing grading of exams. And then the third way is basically computer aided instruction, where there are systems that students directly do homework. And then the underlying AI system is building a model of what the student knows and doesn't know, and can then give them the next steps of instructional material based on that. There's a math education system called Newton that is pretty successful in supporting students in that way. To me, I really most partial to the systems that are supports for faculty, and in the case of the advising, also support for staff in assisting the student. Even the Newton math system, there's a faculty who's part of reviewing the student work. Because I think it's really important in higher ed and in all sorts of teaching and learning that students know there are people who care about them and are paying attention to them.
And with that information, in the past year, how has AI changed the landscape of higher education?
So Chat GPT burst onto the scene, I think it was like last summer and certainly into the fall, as this technology that's really good at writing essays. Basically, you ask questions and it's like agglomerated all of the knowledge slash incorrect or biased information on the web. And then it generates these like pretty well written essays. And so I think we're actually yet to see the large scale change that will be happening in the coming months and years. At my school, we organized info discussion session at the very beginning of the semester. So in end of January 2023, one of the faculty who co-led the session, she's head of our college writing program, which of course will be obviously impacted by a system that can write essays. She basically said, we just are getting through COVID, 2 years of disruption and redesign. Can we only take a breath before we have to do it again? And kind of the answer is no. We are going to have to do it again because it is such a disruptive technology. We're yet to see the direct impacts, but we're already starting to make accommodations across the higher ed landscape.
How has AI impacted how students learn, but also how faculty members grade?
Basically, is Chat GPT friend or foe? From one standpoint is we could try to fight it off and basically ban it. And I know that some K-12 school districts have done that. And I know that some schools have said that the default policy is students aren't allowed to use it. I think that's a mistake. I think that ChatGPT and other generative I mean, we know already Microsoft and Google are integrating them into the everyday tools that we're going to use. It's going to be integrated into Word, it's going to be integrated into email, it's going to be integrated in all the digital tools that we routinely use. And it's a pretty useful thing. So I think in higher ed, we need to find ways to make peace with it and make friends with it and teach our students how to use it. When they leave school, they're going to be in the working world, the professional world, and we're going to be using those tools. So it's incumbent upon us in higher ed to figure out how to support students in appropriate use of tools like ChatGPT.
With this understanding, is there a need to change grading practices given the nuances of AI?
I was just interacting with a colleague this week who had a student who English isn't her first language. And in this class, the student is writing lab reports. That's the primary sort of product that's being assessed in the class. And at the beginning of the semester, the student's work was the writing was not fabulous. There were lots of errors, and this person's learning to use professional English. And then they turned in a lab report that was like grammatically perfect. So the faculty member suspected that ChatGPT was involved. My role in my college, one of the things I do is I support faculty with academic dishonesty cases, and then I have to adjudicate in the cases where students appeal. So I encouraged her to report this and to meet with the student. So the faculty member met with the student, and the student admitted using it. They were under a lot of stress and the thing was due, and so they admitted using it. The faculty member is going to give them a chance to rewrite the report on their own. That one is a clear cut case that had a happy ending because of the passion of the faculty member. So faculty are on the alert for work that doesn't feel like the student did it themselves. This makes it a lot easier for students to take these shortcuts in their learning. And so the pressure on faculty is they care about academic quality, they care about student learning. It's another thing to be aware of and worry about. But I think the next step is for faculty to think, okay, how can I bring Chat GPT and the things that follow it? And again, it's going to be integrated into our everyday writing tools. So it's something we have to figure out how to support students in using and learning from.
What are some ethical considerations of grading assignments which might have utilized AI technology?
Right. So, I mean, a lot of the work that happens in education is students are making products that are assessed. And there's this dual nature to the work that they do. So they're making something that's intended to be a learning process. And then the result of that work is assessed. And sometimes the thing that they write up is not the product itself. There could be some other work that then they're documenting, or maybe the writing product is the main output and the thinking that went in to make that writing product is where the learning happens. I mean, it adds work to faculty because you need to evaluate more the process the student goes through. So there could be more checkpoints where the faculty scaffold students' work. So the process is more exposed and students can more directly reveal the process by which they're learning and producing. I do think it will imply changes, and broadly speaking, those changes add to the amount of work that faculty have to do to support their students. There's also an ongoing conversation about authorship. So, what does it mean to create work where you've used these tools? At a professional level, that's a conversation. I think it folds back into teaching and learning. The use of tools needs to be disclosed. It's sort of like one of the trends in scientific work, in journal articles, multi author articles, to have a narrative of who did what. So, it's not just a list of names on the article, but it is that. And it's a conversation about how each person contributed to being co-author of a given paper. So I think that's a good analogy for what needs to go on with these AI tools that will be supporting our creative work. That when someone creates something, they need to describe how did they make use of slash collaborate with these AI systems.
What else should we know about the usage of AI in grading within higher education?
Yes, when we started out, I was talking about one of the three uses, which is AI supportive grading. I think that's another dimension is that faculty can use these tools as well. So it's really, these are professional tools in our world. And I think it's important that we all learn how to use them to become more productive, right? A lot of conversation about jobs that will be lost because of AI, and then even more jobs will be created. I think the main thing is that so much work will be affected by these AI systems and the opportunity of accelerating our human creativity and productivity with the use of them. So I think in higher ed, it's both faculty will be using these tools for themselves. They'll be using them to support student work. That was another dimension of what I shared at the beginning, that a lot of AI, it can surface information about an individual student or a group of students that then faculty can act on. So I really believe that we need to make these systems our friends and be able to be more successful because of that relationship that we have with these digital tools.
Fred, thank you for joining me today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this special episode of On Campus, and be sure to follow, like, and subscribe to stay in the know. If you enjoyed this podcast, you might also be interested in other podcasts from CITI program, including On Research and On Tech Ethics. Please visit CITI program's website to learn more about all of our offerings at citiprogram.org. I also invite you to review our content offerings regularly, as we are continually adding new courses, subscriptions, and webinars that may be of interest to you, like CITI Programs, AI in Higher Education webinar. All of our content is available to you anytime through organizational and individual subscriptions.